And now let's get to the very latest from the family of a South Jersey influencer found dead in Africa over the weekend.
The family of Ashlee Robinson wants answers. They say the story just doesn't add up. Police say she was found unconscious in a luxury villa in Zanzibar and later pronounced dead at a hospital. CBS Philadelphia's Ross DeMattei is following the story from our newsroom tonight. Ross?
Yuki, still a lot of unanswered questions here. We are still waiting at this hour on the results of Ashlee Robinson's autopsy, and that report should provide some answers about whether her fiancé had anything to do with her death.
Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. If it's your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Seriously, you're going to want to stay tapped in. And if you've been rocking with the channel, I appreciate you always. Now this case. We first talked about this story not too long ago, and at the time it already had people shaken. A South Jersey woman, Ashlee Robinson, found dead in a luxury resort room in Zanzibar. And from the very beginning, the details didn't sit right. Because what we know is this: she traveled overseas with her fiancé. They checked into a high-end resort, the kind of place that looks calm on the outside, almost too calm. But behind that calm surface, something shifted fast. There was an argument. We know that much. We also know she was moved into a separate room after that dispute. And after that point, her voice goes quiet. Then comes the part that made everything heavier. A delay. Not minutes. Not confusion in the moment. Hours passed before anyone outside that situation was told what had happened inside that room. And when authorities finally began documenting what they found, one detail stood out in the medical report. Something physical that didn't get a full explanation in the public record. A mark. Around her neck. Not fully clarified. Not fully resolved. Just noted. And that's where this case starts to shift from just a tragic death into something people are still trying to piece together. She wasn't a mystery person before any of this. Ashlee Robinson, 31 years old, South Jersey, the kind of adult life that doesn't stand out in headlines on its own. She had people around her, connections that mattered, a normal rhythm most people would recognize, work, relationships, day-to-day decisions that keep life moving forward. From what's been shared, she wasn't someone drifting without direction. She was present in her own life, engaged in it, grounded in that way where people expect you to show up when you say you will, and independent enough to make her own choices without hesitation. That balance, being connected but still self-directed, matters here. Because nothing about her background suggests someone who would just vanish without a trace or explanation in her usual environment. But then the setting changes. Zanzibar, a place most people don't end up by accident. It's not close. It's not familiar. It's not the kind of environment where you can just step outside and immediately find your bearings in what you know. It's remote in a different way. Beautiful, yes, but removed from the structure of home. She travels there with her fiancé. That's the context. Not alone. Not disconnected. But still far from everything familiar. And that distance matters more than it seems at first. Because when you're somewhere like that, you're relying on the space around you to function the way it's supposed to. The systems, the people, the response time if something goes wrong. You're also far from the immediate presence of family. The kind of presence that notices changes quickly, that asks questions early, that interrupts silence before it stretches too long. So even though it looks like a trip, it also creates separation, not just physical distance from home, but situational distance from anything familiar that could step in fast if needed. And within that space, something shifts. Not loudly, not in a way that's visible from the outside right away, but enough that the story doesn't stay stable for long. Because she didn't disappear. She arrived, and then something changed. Zanzibar. Not crowded, not chaotic, quiet in a way that feels expensive. You step onto a property like that, and everything slows down. Palm trees, ocean right there, staff moving soft, voices low. It's designed to feel safe. Private. Contained. Rooms set apart from each other. Paths instead of busy hallways. People minding their own space. You can go hours without really seeing anyone if you don't want to. That's the appeal. That's also the risk. Because when something goes wrong in a place like that, it doesn't echo. It stays where it happened. She's there with him. The person she traveled with. The one she trusted enough to leave the country with. At this point, nothing looks off from the outside. Couple on a trip. Resort life. Normal movement. Check-ins. Meals. Quiet nights. Everything fitting the picture. But look closer at the setup. You're in a foreign country. Different laws. Different response times. Different systems if you need help. You're not calling someone back home and getting immediate answers. You're relying on the resort, on their staff, their procedures, their timing. And if something serious happens, you don't control how fast anything moves. You wait. You depend. And while all that's in place, you're also far from anyone who knows you well enough to read between the lines. No familiar eyes. No one noticing small changes. Just the two of you, in a place built for privacy. That's when the shift starts. Not loud, subtle, from vacation energy to something tighter, less open, more contained. You don't see it right away. You feel it later. When you start asking how everything could stay so quiet for so long, how nothing spilled out, how no one stepped in. Because from the outside, it all looked perfect. Nothing out of place. Nothing drawing attention. Everything where it should be. Everything held in. Everything contained, controlled, quiet. April 8th. She makes a call. Not casual. Not small talk. You can hear it in the tone. Something's off. She says they argued. Bad enough. They're no longer in the same room. Separate spaces now. Same resort. Different doors. That's a line. Once that happens, whatever was holding things together is already slipping. No yelling caught on camera. No public scene. Just a quiet split. And that's the last time her voice is heard. No follow-up. No second call. Just silence after that. If you're paying attention right now, hit that like button, subscribe, because this part, this shift, it matters more than it looks. Because once that call ends, everything that comes next comes from someone else. After that call, there are no more words from her. Morning comes in the way it always does there. Light pushing through thin curtains. Warm air outside trying to get in. Inside the room though, nothing changes. According to him, this is when he finds her. He says she's unresponsive. He says he walks in and realizes something is wrong immediately. Not confusion. Not delay in understanding. Just that moment where you know something has shifted and you can't undo it. He describes it as her having done something to herself. That's his wording. And then comes the part that doesn't sit right on its own. Time. He says he found her at a certain point in the morning. But the first time anyone outside that situation hears about it, it's much later. Hours later. Not a short delay where things get confused and panic. Not a few minutes lost in shock. Hours. 11 of them. Now that number sits heavy in this case. Because if something serious happens, anything serious, time becomes loud. People call. Staff gets involved. Emergency response moves fast. That's how it usually works. But here, there's a gap. A long one. Between the moment he says he found her, and the moment anyone else is told. In that window, nothing is publicly documented. Nothing is clearly explained. Just silence and passage of time. And when the notification finally comes through, it doesn't come in the way you'd expect either. It comes after. Well after. And once that happens, the sequence of events stops feeling like a straight line. It starts to feel like pieces missing in between. Because in any emergency, time moves fast. Here, it didn't move at all. 11 hours. Not abstract. Not a guess. A full stretch of time you can actually move through. Morning becomes midday. Midday starts leaning into afternoon. Sun shifts position. Light changes inside a room without anyone touching a switch. Outside that resort, people are moving through a normal rhythm. Staff checking rooms. Cleaning pathways. Guests coming and going. Phones ringing somewhere in the background. Life continues like nothing is wrong. But inside this case, there's a block of time that doesn't get explained clearly. 11 hours where one thing should have happened quickly. Alerting someone. Calling for help. Bringing in medical response. Escalating the situation. That's what usually fills that kind of gap. Instead, what you have is silence layered on silence. So you start breaking it down differently. Hour 1. Something has already happened. Hour 2. Still no outside awareness. Hour 3. No escalation visible. Hour 4. Resort life keeps moving. And it keeps going like that. Not one sharp interruption that explains the delay. Just continuous time passing without public clarity. That's what makes this uncomfortable. Not just what happened in the room, but what didn't happen outside of it. No immediate chain reaction. No visible urgency that matches the severity of the situation as later described. And when you step back and look at the full window, it stops being just a number. It becomes a pattern of absence. Missing calls. Missing action. Missing urgency where you'd normally expect it. The question isn't emotional yet. It's structural. What fills 11 hours like that in a real emergency setting? Who is contacted first? Who isn't contacted at all? And why does the first clear notification arrive so far down the line? Those answers don't come in the record we have. Only the gap does. And in true crime, gaps like that don't stay quiet. They get louder the longer you look at them. 11 hours is not confusion. It's a span of time that demands explanation. At some point, she makes it to medical care. That part is not in question. What matters is what gets written down when she's there. A report is created. Clinical language. Short descriptions. Observations, not theories. And inside that report, there's a detail that stands out immediately. A mark. Around the neck. Not fully explained in the documentation. Not expanded into a clear conclusion. Just noted. Recorded. Then left there. Now in cases like this, medical notes usually try to stay careful. They describe what is visible. They avoid jumping ahead of what cannot be confirmed. But even within that structure, you can still feel when something doesn't fully resolve on paper. Because this mark doesn't come with a story attached to it. No final determination. No clear classification in the public summary. Just an observation sitting in isolation. And that creates distance between two things that now exist in the same case. On one side, there's what is being said about how everything unfolded. On the other, there's what is physically recorded. And those two things don't automatically line up. One is narrative, the other is documentation, and they're not fully speaking to each other here. That's the tension point. Not speculation, not interpretation, just the contrast between claim and record, between explanation and observation. And in the middle of that gap is where questions start forming on their own. Because a mark like that doesn't disappear when you don't explain it. It just sits there, unresolved, and it becomes part of everything that follows. It was documented, but not explained. By the time the outside world gets involved, it's already layered in delay. Not just in what happened, but in when people are told it happened. Back in South Jersey, her family isn't hearing this in real time. They're not sitting at a hospital. They're not getting immediate updates from staff. They're waiting for information that's already been filtered through someone else. Through him. The fiancé. That's how the first communication comes through. Not a direct call from authorities. Not a formal immediate notification process reaching them cleanly and quickly. It moves through one person before it reaches the people who know her best. And that changes everything about how it lands. Because when families hear news like this secondhand, there's always a split second where the brain tries to hold on to denial. Maybe there's been a mistake. Maybe details are wrong. Maybe there's another explanation still coming. But that moment doesn't last long. Because the language doesn't soften it. She's gone. That's what eventually reaches them. And once that line is spoken, everything else after it becomes secondary. The details, the timeline, the unanswered parts, all of it hits at once. And while they're trying to process that, there's another layer they're also dealing with. The timing. Because by the time they're hearing this, the events have already played out hours earlier. Maybe more. That gap between what happened and what they're being told isn't just administrative. It's emotional distance being created in real time. You don't get to sit with your person in their final moments. You don't get to understand the situation as it unfolds. You get the aftermath, delivered late. And in this case, even the basic sequence feels stretched out. Something happened. Time passed. Then the family found out. Not in a straight line, but in pieces that don't arrive together. And when that happens, grief doesn't just start at loss. It starts at confusion. Because the question that sits underneath everything else is simple, and it never really goes away. Why didn't we know sooner? By the time her family heard her name, she was already gone. Now the story shifts again, away from emotion for a second, into structure, into what actually exists on paper. This didn't happen in New Jersey. It didn't happen somewhere with immediate access to familiar systems. It happened in Zanzibar, Tanzania jurisdiction. That matters more than most people realize when they first hear a case like this. Because once you cross into a different legal system, the way information moves changes completely. Different authorities, different procedures, different thresholds for what gets released publicly. And in situations like this, families don't always get a full, continuous feed of information the way they would expect at home. They get pieces, sometimes delayed, sometimes incomplete, sometimes filtered through multiple steps before it ever reaches them. What becomes publicly available is also limited. Reports exist, yes. Medical documentation exists in parts. Statements exist in fragments. But the full picture, everything aligned in one clear, accessible sequence, is not something the public has access to hear. And that creates a very specific kind of gap. Not in what people are saying emotionally, but in what can actually be verified. Some elements remain unclear, not fully detailed, not fully released in a way that closes every question. And that's where this case sits right now. Not resolved in a public, complete sense. Not fully tied together in a way that eliminates uncertainty. Just positioned in that uncomfortable middle space where information exists, but not enough of it connects cleanly. So what you're left with is structure without closure, facts without full context, and timelines that still have open ends. That's the reality of it. No added meaning needed. Just limits. Because in this investigation, the truth isn't missing entirely. It just doesn't arrive in one complete line. The investigation exists, but the answers don't fully follow. Now everything keeps coming back to the same point. Not because anyone is forcing it there, but because the structure of the story keeps pointing in one direction. The fiancé, he is the last confirmed person with her. The last voice inside that environment who can account for what happened in that room, in that window of time, in that gap. And that position matters. Because in any case like this, whoever is last in proximity to the event becomes the anchor for everything that follows. He is also the first source of explanation. The first person to describe what happened inside those hours. And that means the first framing of the story comes through him. What was seen? What was found? How it was described? When it was reported? All of it starts there. That's not unusual on its own. But what becomes important is how that information moves outward. The delay in reporting. The way details are introduced in sequence. The timing of when others are informed. It creates a structure where the initial version of events carries a lot of weight before anything else can challenge it or clarify it. And in cases like this, early framing tends to stick. Not because it's confirmed, but because it arrives first. So when people look back at the timeline, they're not just looking at what happened. They're looking at how it was presented at the start. And who presented it. That becomes part of the investigation itself. Not in terms of conclusions, but in terms of influence over the narrative. Because once one person is the main point of contact, the main voice relaying information, the main link between the event and the outside world, they also become the filter, even unintentionally. Every detail passes through that point before it reaches anyone else. And that's where scrutiny naturally forms. Not from assumptions, not from conclusions, but from structure, from timing, from sequence, from who knew what, and when it was shared. Because when one person holds the timeline, every gap becomes theirs to explain. So when you strip everything back, what's left is not noise, not theories, not interpretations, just a few confirmed points sitting in a straight line. There was an argument, not minor, not brushed off, one that led to separation in the same space. Different rooms, same resort, same night continuing on in silence. Then comes the moment where everything stops. She is no longer heard from directly after that point. And what follows is not immediate clarity, but distance in time. Hours pass before anyone outside is told what happened inside that room. Not minutes, not urgency meeting urgency. Hours. And in the medical documentation that follows, there is a physical detail noted. A mark, around the neck, recorded, but not fully explained in public detail. And that's it. That's the structure that holds the entire case together right now. Argument, separation, death, delay, a mark that hasn't been fully clarified in the public record. No need to stretch beyond that. No need to force answers that aren't in front of us. Because what remains is already heavy on its own. A sequence of events that doesn't resolve into a clean explanation when you line it up end to end. Just points in time that don't fully connect in a way that closes the gap. And that gap is what people keep coming back to. Because once you remove everything else, that's what's left. A woman traveled across the world and never came back. Not because no one was there, but because the truth somehow still isn't.